everyone is there for the same reason. Everyone wants to keep the railway moving. Everyone wants to diagnose those faults. Everyone wants to fix those faults.
Yes, work is quite out there, but in different trades, there is different requirements for what you need, and we specialize in different areas. So I would push back on everything saying there's quiet out there. Yes, it is, but that doesn't mean your training should suffer.
If I can give you some knowledge and pass that knowledge on to you, and you get to the same level as me, and then your skill set is slightly better than me in other aspects and you get above me, well done to you.
When you've got downtime, etc., just get out there, take bits off, put bits on, see what happens. You're only going to learn through experience.
You're not surrounded by other people. You're not trying to not feel small and feel, I'm not going to ask this question because I don't want to look like I don't understand. You have that. I think it might be a way forward.
I think we as an industry need to really look at ourselves at how we are ensuring that the skill fade and the information that delegates take away with them is relevant and stays relevant.
Thank you so much for inviting me down to Intertrain and City and Guilds in London's HQ. I'm Daniel Merritt, and this is 𝗟𝗡 Unfiltered episode 3. Really excited about what we're trying to do and within our space within railway. And let's do introductions.
I'm Nick Scott, head of Signalling and Telecoms for Intertrain.
And I am Sharnie Wheels, and I'm a trainer for City and Guilds Intertrain.
So today it's about training and about the railway's current position in training, but also about the signalling side of training, which me being a tester makes my life slightly easier. Talking about your head of signalling of the train, so it makes life simpler for all of us. You're both ex-Network Rail S&T. Do you want to very briefly give people a bit more understanding who you are and your background?
My history is a very, very short time as a contractor. And then I moved into Network Rail as an operative initially, and 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. After a short time there, I went and spent most of my time at Clapham Junction, obviously getting supported by the management and supervisors over there. Building my way up to technician, and then I moved to Streatham Depot, which is where I started going into team leading and getting a permanent role as a team leader. Shortly after that, but about 4 years later, I moved into training, and about 2.5, 3 years after that, I moved into my new role, which is now with Intertrain.
So your whole career on rail has been S&T?
Yes, that's correct.
Apart from training?
Yep.
But now into S&T training. How long have you been on track?
I think it's about 13, 14 years now altogether, been on track.
And yourself?
Yeah, so I started via the apprenticeship scheme, underwent the S&T apprenticeship. I then worked my way to, same as Nick, I went to the Streatham Depot, which is where I gained most of my knowledge and became an S&T tech. I then went into the training world to become a trainer for S&T. And then just recently, I have moved over to Intertrain to become a trainer over there.
Okay, so why is that so fundamental? Is because when you actually have your candidates and teach an S&T, you also have the backing of the knowledge on 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏's career history to support your train, which is quite fundamental. It's quite hard to get in training, so because some trainers come straight from other disciplines. But you would also agree that having that background emphasizes everything inside that classroom.
Yeah, I think majority of the courses are always made better when you've got something relatable to talk about. So obviously, majority of the courses, I still do quite a bit of training, even in my new role that I do. There's always those tasks that you've gone out and you've actually experienced a failure or you experienced an issue, and you know exactly how to go and resolve that issue. So trying to make sure that you bring that into your deliveries is more beneficial to delegates. And that's not to say that you have to have railway knowledge to be able to train, but obviously it does develop a really good quality course when they've got relatability, particularly for both of us. We've actually worked in the southern region, which is where we do a lot of our delivery of courses. And there's also people out there that know who we are. So when you're delivering courses, there's almost a little bit of sort of respect before you've even started that this person knows what they're talking about.
Industry is quite, as much as it's a vast industry and various different routes to go down, it's also not as big as you think. And S&T is mirrored that. S&T, there's so many different trades you can do, but it's also very small. And you see the same people and you generally know the same names, and that's apparent throughout.
I think it's definitely apparent in training with the S&T, because you see the same faces, you see them progress, or you'll speak to somebody who, oh, this person had you as a trainer, this person had you as a trainer. And from that, you can draw from different knowledge pools, different areas, different people, because everyone has different skills in different ways.
And people learn differently as well, don't they? So we all have trainers that we relate to more. We all have trainers that we find easier to learn from because there's different techniques of learning. And that comes down to when you have skill fade issue on the railway. So one element that you're really trying to push at the moment is trying to echo the conversation about it's okay to have skill fade, but it's what we do about it. So from my experience being on track, there's several bits of kit that I probably have skill fade on and that I could do refresh courses on. Do you find it quite hard to try and get to the employers or to the subcontractor side of saying it's okay to have skill fade and come to do a 1-day refresher, a 2-day refresher, because it won't put you behind. It's actually making sure that you're competent and happy to go forward. As we've mentioned before, you'd rather, as a company, you'd rather be supported by knowing that your staff are fully updated on upcoming works than dealing with the aftermath of delays of handbacks or reputation.
Yeah, I think we've been speaking to quite a lot of companies, and that's net rail and contracting companies, supervisors, managers, etc. And a lot of them are saying the same things that they know that there's skill fade about. There's quite a few of them interested in what it would look like to obviously offer upskill for their staff. I guess the biggest hang up 9 times out of 10 is staff's time away from working and then cost. So I think there's a bit of a piece to be done on skill fade in terms of how do we support the infrastructure currently as it is, and then going forward, looking into training. When we develop training, how do we look at making sure that as the boys and girls go out there to do their work, and they, sometimes you do a training course and you don't use it for 6 months, for instance, and then you've got to find a way of making sure that you're still proficient in doing that. How do we build that into a training course? Is there other help guides for them to make sure that they feel more confident and competent when they go out there? And 9 times out of 10, when we deliver courses, that's the main 2 phrases we like to use is a delegate confident, and are they competent to go out there and deliver the work? And if they aren't those 2 things, then they need support in getting to that point where they are.
But it is a paramount to jump in here. It is a paramount that it's not 99 out of 100. It's not the candidate or the individual's fault for having skill fade. It's just in S&T, there is so much kit out there to remember everything off by heart. Like, yes, you have the SMSs and the S&T handbooks. That's my world. But the other handbooks out there, like installation handbooks. But it's unrealistic to remember every fault in the maintenance on every bit of kit. It's just unrealistic. So that's where we need to work together as an industry of how do we change the mindset? And I'm not saying we did it today, but how do we change the mindset to say, hey, I have skill fade on this. I want to come and just do a 1-day refresher.
So I think for me, in terms of skill fade, those courses need to be available, which is what we would like to try and introduce, so that people don't have to hide the fact they've got a skill fade. I personally will be one of the people that will say, yes, I've got it. I haven't worked on this in a while, and get some guidance. So to have the opportunity as somebody with your boots on the ground to go, do you know what? 1 day can get me back up to where I need to be knowledge-wise. Yes, okay, you're going to lose that 1 day of work, but it's safer. You're going to understand it more, and you're going to be able to work to the standards that you should be working to without a lack of
the confidence. Exactly, we jumped on that same thing. Yeah, it is about working on the kit with confidence, and you're only going to get that by having the faults or dealing with the experience of faults. Or I'm talking about an S&T world because that's where my head goes. But like we were talking about stripping down a cable and making off a 38 core or a 40 core or whatever we do, 48 core, sorry. Sometimes if you haven't done installation work for, let's say you took 2 years off the track, but you're still an installer, but you've been promised several weeks work or a couple months project, fantastic, but you don't want to make a fool of yourself, you want there needs to be a space where you can say, I just want to come in for one day to redo the skills in a safe environment. And that's where I think conversations need to be had with training companies and contractors.
And I think a prime example of that is, as a trainer doing the cables, I have took that course so many times, yet when you're teaching it, you're not doing those skills. Then when I work on little projects myself to use those skills, I have to really recall those practical skills. So I think, as you said, if you're an installer, you've had some time off, yet you've now got a big project coming up, you want to go out there feeling your best. You want to go out there feeling the most confident that you are doing the job how it should be done.
And everyone, regardless of what assumptions and beliefs are, everybody wants to just do their job to the best ability and get on to the next job. Nobody wants to go on and do a bad job. Sometimes we don't know what issues there are. Some people do have skill fade and they may just want, that goes down a whole world of subcontractors taking shifts that they're not competent on kit, which is an issue in the industry. And there is a lot happening to counter that, but there should be more done on that. But again, I don't understand it because I wouldn't do a job unless I was competent on the kit. Now, arguably, there may be kit that I'm trained on and have experience on, but I may come across a fault that I've just not seen before, or handled before, or experienced before, or have the knowledge or experience to fix that particular fault. So therefore, we said before, we all have a phone book in our phones. We all know other people. You send that message, you on nights, you on days, you about, because you need that. And we all have a network, and we need to stop hiding behind the fact that we all bounce off each other. A brilliant S&T tester, regardless if it's new works, if you're an operative or whatever it is, everybody bounces off each other. And it may be a case of just calling me up and going, I've got this, I've done this. What step would you take next? Because I can't figure out the next step of what on my final is. It doesn't mean that you don't know that kit. It just means you haven't come across that fault. And there is you have some great minds out there that have made particular documents or handouts or material to hand out to the guys on track, or men and women on track that have had those experiences, but you don't have them on you all times, and you may not see that kit for 6 months to a year. And I think there is a lot to do about, as an industry, where we say, okay, there is a skill fade issue. Yes, I have this person to speak to. Yes, I have this person to speak to, and that's okay.
I think to put it into context, when I moved into training, obviously you go and have a look at everything that you have competency wise. And I think when I had a look, it was something along the lines of 81 competencies that I had. Obviously, 1 or 2 of them were things like your PTS and your medical, etc. But that sit on there. But there was 81 of them, and I think 74 of them were all S&T based. And like you say, you can't realistically manage all of those in a 6-month period, a 12-month period, even a 24-month period. It's a lot to do. So, for instance, interlockings. I've got 4 interlockings still on my profile. I can't tell you the last time I touched an interlocking. So anytime that I have an issue, and if I go in their training center, and sometimes a trainer might have an issue and you go and support them just purely, 1, because you always need a second pair of hands, and 2, it's going to help me regain a little bit of that knowledge that I may not have known about whilst I'm doing it. But I'm now going to work on a piece of equipment or assist on a piece of equipment I haven't worked on for the last 6 to 12 months. So it's a common issue that they have with it throughout the entire issue.
All levels.
Yeah, all levels. But this is where also we were talking earlier about how we support each other as a team, and how you've got to build a team now on the railway to make sure that, if you're not working on something, can the other person support you? And if you're not a good enough, or not giving that information from a team leader's point of view, and making sure the next person below you has got that information so they can also support you to make sure the job goes smoother. It's another side to look at, is how we're building our teams to ensure that they can take on all these tasks.
I think there is a lot of talk about generations not wanting to work, and I think every generation has that mindset of the one below them. But I think that has been knocked out the park in the generation currently. I'm nearly 40, and shockingly, but in my own head. But I believe the generation below me, they do want to work in S&T, that they are strong, they are wanting to learn, and you just got to actually give them a chance. Like, I remember not being given that chance and being push back at every opportunity to learn about the drawings, because to read signaling drawings is a whole nother thing you have to try and get your head around. And yes, you may see the same kit and find out where the feed and everything else go into, but to the point of now I look back and I'm like, but it's not as hard as I thought it was, but we all need to do better at communicating and working as a team, as you say. And that's easier said than done, but how does that start? And I think it starts with conversations that we all say, you know what, we need to work better as an industry, because otherwise it's just spiral with the same.
I think especially when you're out on track, and especially for me, as when I came in as an apprentice, I didn't know anything. And I openly admit I didn't know anything. I gained some knowledge, but sometimes I could go weeks without gaining any knowledge just because it was easier to not share it with me because it was quicker and such. So I think it's important to remember that everyone is there for the same reason. Everyone wants to keep the railway moving. Everyone wants to diagnose those faults. Everyone wants to fix those faults. So why are we not sharing that knowledge? Why are we not discussing, oh, I had this happen, this is what caused it? So if someone else goes to another bit of equipment and are getting the same symptoms, then they can have a look at it.
A lot of people would push back on that and say it's because they don't want people taking their roles or going up the structure, the career ladder to counter them. And then there's more in the world of mine. You don't want so many SNTHs at a certain level because then I get less call outs. That's rubbish. There's enough work out there. Yes, work is quite out there, but in different trades, there is different requirements for what you need, and we specialize in different areas. So I would push back on everything saying there's quiet out there. Yes, it is. But that doesn't mean your training should suffer.
And again, it's not just your knowledge that's going to get you further and progress you. It's that companies and people will look at how you work within a team, what your peers think of you, what your colleagues are saying about you, because you're not going to employ someone who, yes, they might have a lot of knowledge in S&T. Actually, they're not going to help your depot. They're not
short term. They'll help it, but they won't long term because they won't bring up the team that are there to be there long term.
I mean, most of the successful people on the railway, and that's whether net rail or contractors, are those ones that go there and work hard for it. They go out there and they want to find that information. If you won't give them that information, then they will go and look for it and find out from other people where to get it from. I've had more than enough students turn up or delegates turn up on courses, and they wait behind and they'll ask a couple of questions after the fact, not because they didn't necessarily understand it. Sometimes it's almost like they want to show that they are really taking information on, and they want to make sure that they knowledge checking themselves almost. So there's people out there that, even, I know, like we say, we should be supporting those people. Even without your support, they want to dig and get further ahead because that's just what their mentality is. But like you've already said, in terms of people progression, for me, if you're better than me, then you should be above me. It's as simple as that. But if I can give you some knowledge and pass that knowledge on to you, and you get to the same level as me, and then your skill set is slightly better than me in other aspects, and you get above me, well done to you. I need to work harder if that's where I want to be.
And it is fair to say there are some fantastic people, knowledgeable people in the S&T. Let's talk about S&T. And there are extremely knowledgeable people that are more than happy to help you if you reach out and ask them for help. I've asked multiple for help in specialist points or tracks, etc., etc. And if you are one of those people that are happy to help, comment, let us know. And we will build up a community over time, especially in Connected Railway, where we will be providing the help or have an accessible area where you can ask for help and be it okay to ask.
I think it's important that people know it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to make a phone call to someone you don't know, but they're in the S&T world.
Make sure you're permission fair. Don't S&T call me.
But just reach out, and as you say, if people comment, let people know you're there. Let us know you want to help, because as a trainer, especially, we can point someone in your direction.
And that's it. And there are some incredible people out there that are in route.
I think it's it's also important for people to start sort of, maybe commenting on this video, but also trying to get some more input through whatever avenues we can find in terms of what do you think is the issues that we have in terms of skill fade? What would look better, or how can we help people as an industry, not just as a company, to improve that, to make sure that you, like I said before, that you go out confident and competent. At the end of the day, there's one reason why we have training. And the reason why we have to be confident and competent is to ensure that there's no incidents on the railway. That's realistically why we have training, and why we make sure that we can do our jobs to a higher standard and make sure we meet those standards at all times.
And like you said, it is a fundamental known fact that there is a mass skill fade in the railway currently.
Yeah.
But every business, including the heads of Network Rail, are saying we need more information on where we need to tackle it. So they're not hiding from it. It's just a case of how do we tackle it, so everyone needs to stay
So I think the workers out there, the S&T guys, they need to be honest. They need to let us know, yeah, this is where we've got skill fade, so that something can be done about it. Or say, do you know what? I don't have skill fade. I know someone who does. Maybe this could help them.
Or
give suggestions without naming names, because we need those gaps filled. And the only way as a training community that we're going to know how to help the guys out there and girls out there is by them telling us what do they need from us to fill these gaps.
I think that's probably an inherent thing within the railway, though, isn't it? Not wanting to express yourself the whole time. When there's a problem, not necessarily just for training or skill fades, etc. It's something that I think within the railway, I noticed when I first came on, that sort of people seem to stay enclosed, whether that's because you're worried about you won't get any more work, or you're worried about what someone might think of you, etc.
Money. As a subcontractor, I'm not going to openly tell the world, or no, I'm quite open, I have a skill fade on HW points, because I don't want a resourcing company not to use me on that job. Now, arguably, if it was to a point that I felt unsafe, I wouldn't take it. But if it's still my competencies, then I could lose my career, or that part of my career, or be seen by my peers as lesser of a tester. Now, arguably, I'm quite good at HWs, by the way, but I'm just saying.
I think what you've got to look at in that respect of, do I lose a shift, or do I lose my career?
Yes, hammer on the nab, however you want to say it, fantastic. But the caveat to that is there just isn't enough work out there at the moment. And if you're only getting one shift every 2 weeks, you bend to... I'm not saying it's okay.
You can understand why people are doing it, right? At the end of the day, do they hold the competency? Yes. Are they confident? Probably not.
They can get through.
But like you say, the current state of the railway at the moment, where the work from CP7 hasn't come through like everyone would like it to come through. There's bits and bobs here and there. And like you say, some contractors are having to diversify what they do to not only just do works testing. Some of them are looking at moving over to the SMTH side to cover P-way jobs, or to help to cover some renewal stuff, etc. So you can understand why people are, if there's a shift available, or there's only 2 out of the 5 days or 6 days they're willing to work, why they're taking them on. But I think, as Sharnie says, if anything should go wrong because that skill fade is there, what would have been the right thing to do? Would it have been to go on a day or a 2 day to make sure you feel confident to do it?
So where are these 1 day and 2 days? Because me as a tester, I wouldn't even know where to look for refresher courses. And that's one thing we want to do as an app, where we're bringing out the third part of the app very soon to the training side, where training providers like yourself can post. So for instance, S&T, if you put down that your skill set is SMTH and you've got clamp blocks, if a clamp block refresher 1 day for this amount of money in this area, you will get sent a push notification to every SMTH that says they've got clamp blocks, or everyone that's got clamp blocks, so that you can get to the individuals without their labour supply companies knowing, without their peers knowing, but you can then say, this is on to anyone that wants to do it, and they can pay privately, come and see you, and they can get upskilled. Now, there is an area there that inside the grey area, like who can book courses. And I know that's where I struggle with it, because I feel like refresher courses, why does my primary have to book it? personally, but I think that's an argument for another day. And let's just leave that one there for now.
So yeah, I think you're asking where to find them. I think that the issue is, as we've already said, is what do you want?
Yeah.
What is the demand? In the end of the day, as a company, we can't just stick 10 different competencies that we feel need those upskill days. Comment on this video to say what you would like to have come out as upskill days. There is other companies out there, and I'm not going to promote any names necessarily, but they do already help with some upskill days. And sometimes they will help out on a Thursday or Friday, and they'll say, if you're in this area, I'm doing something on diagram reading, for instance. So it's not that there isn't anything out there just yet. There's probably nowhere near enough as to what the industry needs. But like we say, we've got to speak up. We've got to say what the issue is.
We're going to be transparent.
Yeah.
Transparency is key on this point.
Yeah. If people are, as you say, transparent, let us know what they need. We can take that, we can create that, we can deliver that.
Absolutely.
And help close that again.
No, hopefully we one step back. So blended learning, tell me about it. What does it mean to you as a company, and what is your main goal from it?
So at the moment, we're working on a lot of trying to diversify the way in which we can deliver courses.
Why?
Because when it comes to classroom learning, it's not suitable for everyone. And to take a week out of your working environment to just sit in a classroom and watch a PowerPoint, some people don't learn like that. A lot of people don't learn like that. So with the courses I'm currently working on, what I'm trying to do is get the bulk of the classroom learning done via an interactive e-learning, which I'm putting a lot of time and a lot of effort because I'm not the biggest fan of e-learning. So I'm trying to make it how I would enjoy it, how it would keep me interested. That way, when people then come on a course, rather than being able to do a hands-on task once or twice, you can do it 10, 15 times.
Because you've done the time.
Because you've done the bulk of it in your own time, not on a time limit. You can dip in and out. You can branch off to further research if you want to. And I think it's important that people know everyone learns at different paces. And if you're restricted to just 5 days to get everybody's knowledge up to where you need it to be, everybody to know the ins and outs of everything, S&T especially, there's so much background before you get to the practical. And I believe that the blended learning helps with that. So a big one, as I've said, is e-learning. But there's certain situations that I believe sort of VR can play a massive role, because you're going to have certain situations that in S&T you need to be aware of. You need to know the dangers. You need to know these things can happen. They might never happen. But using VR, you can let somebody experience that. You can let somebody go through an accident without going through an accident, to understand the dangers of the role that the S&T do, and to understand why it's important that you fully understand your skill set and understand the equipment that you're working with.
I think the other side of it was repetition, using virtual reality, being able to, when we go and deliver courses, you take people out either as an individual or as a pairing to go and do these assessments to ensure that they've actually taken on board the training that we've done. And if you've got a class of 6 or 8, depending on what course you're delivering, you've got 4 or 5 people that are just sitting in the class doing nothing, and being able to also have a tool, some sort of a VR tool, where they're kind of going out, mimicking similar to what you're going to be doing out there to utilize their fault finding skills, for instance, and being able to do that 2 or 3 times extra, more so than just doing it physically when you go out there, also helps them to be even more ready to go out there. Then also the potential is that if you had that platform that they could use after they were gone from the training course itself, so we were talking about skill fade earlier on, it means that they've also got that tool to ensure that they've got that confidence and competence to continue to do something efficiently. And that's the biggest thing that we're looking at on the railway, is how people get through stuff efficiently. And we've got to try and look at these new learning tools and how we can best suit them so that It's not taking away from the time that they're actually learning on a course, and not shortening a course to make that they're there for less days, but more that it's enhancing the course that they're doing, and making sure that they're getting more hands-on experience, or time for hands-on experience when they're doing the course.
How would you ensure e-learning? To me, the moment I see e-learning, I'm like, oh, I don't want to sit in front of a PC all day just going through their PowerPoint on e-learning. How are you trying to change that mindset and change that e-learning?
It's as I said, I'm exactly the same as you. If someone says to me, you've got this e-learning, so I think, really? So I think it's important that everybody needs to understand, we're not giving you e-learning to do just to annoy you. We want to make this e-learning the best that we can. We welcome feedback. Let us know what you want to see in e-learning and what you don't want to see. We will not give you a full course via e-learning. No one learns like that. That's why the blended learning takes elements of everything. So you can do the e-learning, but yet we will recap it in the classroom as well. There will be an opportunity to ask face-to-face questions about that e-learning. For me, e-learning is a tool, if used correctly, can be great, because you've got some people out there that they can sit behind a computer for a whole day and not have an issue with it. However, you've got some people, they can last about half hour. The idea of e-learning, and I don't agree with time limits on having to do your e-learning within an hour. Everyone reads at different paces. Everyone gets distracted. So I think it's important that e-learning is used in the correct way, so that people know, oh, I'll do half hour of this, I'll take a break, then I'll come back to it.
Okay, so you have several alarm bells in my head because I'm new to all of it. So in PTS, when you do your PTS, you've got to do e-learning currently, and then you walk into your PTS and you have to do a test before you can even carry on with the course to make sure that you've done the e-learn. And it catches people out because they just click next. What was your mindset around the blending and to stop people just clicking next?
So I think that is a big issue. And I think that's going to happen. You can't stop that happening. You can't stop someone giving them the answers sitting next to them. But what you can do is you can make it more interactive. You can make it more interesting so that people are actually reading and taking it in. And actually, the courses I've designed, there's not a lot of reading in them.
I was going to say, there is a caveat to this as well, isn't there? Is that in the S&T world, currently, we're going into a different world here, but currently, 80% of a course is hands-on, right? So the 20% is generally the understanding the equipment, understanding where it would be used, understanding the theory side of it, and then you've got 80% practical. And you wouldn't be able to do the practical unless you knew the theory or knew the basics of the theory. So if you couldn't say a 5-day course and the first day's e-learning and then turn up on day 2 because you would trip because you haven't seen the e-learning. So we're not saying it's just endless information that you don't need. It's information you will need for
I think realistically, I'd rather class it as pre-learning instead of e-learning. And the reason being is that we're not trying to teach you the entire course through the e-learning modules that you've got. We're trying to give you a basic understanding of what to expect when you turn up on the course. So that before you turn up on there, for instance, it's a 5-day course. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel and make it a 3-day or 4-day course, etc., because you're doing this e-learning. We're trying to make sure that when you turn up on day 1, we don't sit in the classroom all day long trying to smash out a load of slides so that we can spend the rest of the week doing the practical side of it. We're going to have a nice little recap on it, and it just means that we can come back to it in smaller segments after that point, just to recap as we move on to the next thing. So if you look at, for instance, BS1 has got a section about is it Introduction to Railway?
Basically, Introduction to Rail.
Or relays. So giving you the basic information of what that is, because you look at our industry currently, we've had a lot of people have left the industry since 2019, I believe it is. And so there is still a lot of new people coming in that have never worked on the railway in their life, and they don't know what a relay is, and they don't know why we've got S&T, how it all started and all the rest of it. And that information is very, very important. But if you look at it as a context of how much information that actually is about the history of the railway for S&T, it's almost half a day's worth of presentation that you've got to go and do for that. Now,
Which is fundamentally you could do in your pre-learning.
that's it.
And you could do that in your own time. You can do that over a day instead of an hour.
Yeah.
And then as trainers, you're trained to spot if you have 8 delegates and several people have hard parts of the theory they didn't understand, you can see that quicker. And you know roughly who you need to work with more on the theory side straight away. And that's what you're...
Yeah, and exactly that is the good thing about the e-learning is you can put knowledge checks in there. The knowledge checks aren't there to trip anyone up. The knowledge checks are there to ensure that we've done our job and designed it correctly and that you're getting from it what we want you to get from it. That way as well, your trainer can get notified of exactly where you did great, where you might need a little bit more support in a way that is a bit more discreet, because some people, they don't like to put their hand up. Some people don't want to make it obvious that they're struggling with a certain area. But as a trainer, we can see that. We understand that you might do better if I show you how to do something, yet you might do better if you read about it. By doing blended learning, you incorporate everything. You incorporate as many learning styles as you wish to.
I'm thinking about the world of like starting your free SQL, mod free SQL, so verification testing, where on pre-learning you could be looking at verification checks and the beginning of what drawings look like and how to read them. That could be on pre-learning, because then when you go into your first day of training, not everyone in the classroom is trying to understand the drawing or what check marks are. I'm not saying you don't come back to them. It's just a case of you're not, like you said, you're not surrounded by other people. You're not trying to not feel small and feel, I'm not going to ask this question because I don't want to look like I don't understand. You have that. I think it might be a way forward. It's got to be engineered correctly and designed properly.
Exactly, which is why it's a bigger job than just one person creating it. We need suggestions. We need to know what you want to see there. And
so you could argue that the delegates don't know what they want to see because they've never done that course.
Not in terms of the content, but in terms of, do you learn by reading? Do you learn by playing a mini game? If we can make a mini game, make a mini quiz in it, etc. The sort of fundamentals of something that will keep them interested, why they would go on their computer in their free time, can we incorporate that into e-learning?
So there's a lot of companies out there that own equipment, that sell equipment to the railway. Let's call a point machine, for argument's sake, where they will design a VR or a click and drag of the different components. And what essentially you're saying is that if it was to do with test, or let's do a signal test, an aspect test, you could go through that as a mini online process to understand the processes of the triangle, where you have to speak to the signaler, look at the relays and look at the signal itself. And you're looking at that signal as SMTH, you're doing that test, you're doing an aspect test, and you could see and visually see the different steps you've got to take, so that when you come back to the classroom, you're like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I've got the check, because I still have to, as tester, I still have to draw the triangle and know what's on my triangle, because the process of the test is to make sure there is a sequence. So you're not missing out if the relay hasn't picked.
So you're referring to Sir, I presume?
Sir?
Yeah.
Oh, God, don't give me this.
This is a triangle, isn't it? SIR.
Might make me look all that on camera. This is the other thing, right? Everyone loves the abbreviations, but there's so many of them. And I don't see them all day long, so no, I don't know it as a drag.
I'm going to explain it just because now I've had said it, so I'm going to have to say it now, aren't I? So signaler, indication and relay. So obviously when we're doing that testing.
I said the signal.
Yeah, so that you said that the triangle, and that's what sits in the triangle, doesn't it?
I know what I'm talking about. I just don't
there we go.
This is the problem in the railway. People know things. There's different things.
Different training companies show it differently. Yeah, absolutely.
But on your point about aspect testing, no, it wasn't wrong. On aspect testing, there is actually someone, I won't name names, but there's someone who's already developed basically a VR that does that, and it's intuitive to a point where if you do something wrong, it'll come up with like a red X or a notification basically to say that that's what you're doing. And that's where we kind of want to move down into trains actually recently, before Christmas, being bought out by PeopleCert. And one of their biggest pushes that we're getting from that company is how we sort of adapt this blended learning and how we use blended learning and AI. And there's some special tools coming out in terms of testing people's knowledge with questions and how they do it, which has been used in schools already as well, which I quite like. And it's just basically like different levels of questions.
None of this is to take over the
No.
It's meant to be blended.
We don't
work
want
with it.
to, as a trainer especially, in S&T, our job in S&T is very hands-on. Nobody can sit there and say, yes, you're competent just from a test, just from you've sat behind a computer and clicked the right buttons. If I don't physically see you do something, I don't know you're competent. I don't know you're confident in it. I don't know you haven't just asked the person sitting next to you to do it.
But it gives you a
But it
core
gives us that
knowledge.
base
Yeah.
line to go from.
Yeah. Baseline.
Slightly off topic, but one of the hardest parts is that knowledge and making sure that they are up to that spec. And that's actually, yeah.
Information.
And actually, I believe that pre-learning / e-learning generates more questions. Because if they've got a little bit of knowledge, it means when they go in there and you actually do your teaching, it means that they've actually got a little bit more confidence to go, hang on, did you say this? What does this mean and how does that affect it? We're speaking recently with some manufacturers and asking about the why. And that's the same thing with the e-learning, is understanding it.
As engineers, in the engineering mindset, you're always like, yeah, but I want to know why it does this. Because I don't care it does it, but I want to know why it does this, but then I understand it better.
And hopefully that e-learning, pre-learning would generate more of those why questions. And
allow us the time in the classroom to discuss those.
So we're saying pre-learning, blending is not there to trip you up. It's there to assist you to get more hands-on, and it opens up your mindset ready for a more practical.
Because there's going to be people out there who they'll do the e-learning, then go away and do their own bits of research on certain subjects, which is fine with the guidance of the right material, which e-learning we can do. We can link out 2 different web pages, 2 helpful resources that are going to progress your career.
I dislike the word e-learning, but pre-learning, I'm supportive. That's weird, isn't it? It's just a word, but you're a pre-learning, like, okay, cool.
Such a grey cloud over e-learning. There always has been. So we're going to go with pre-learn.
Yeah.
Not just because I say it, but you do have that, like, I don't want to do e-learning.
Yeah, it's a common trait with a lot of it, and it's how a lot of people feel. Let's be honest. Within the railway industry, you can walk into a room, go into a depot, go into an office, and you go, has everyone done their e-learning? And you know the eyes will roll and all the rest of it. But let's find a way, as we said, that it's blended into the courses so it's relevant. Let's find ways to challenge them during that pre-learning so that they look at it and they go, oh, I answered 8 out of those 10 questions correct. Okay, I've absorbed quite a bit of information, or I've only answered 4. Should I go back and redo that section or go back and do that other section again because I didn't take that knowledge on? But like I say, even some of these new AI tools that would be nice to really add into the pre-learning as well would be watching what they do and how they do it and how that information comes across so that you know where that knowledge gap is before they even arrive. One of the biggest stigmas within training actually is if you have a learning needs. It's so rare for someone to actually put their hands up. I've had it happen once, and the delegate benefited massively out of it. He was so nervous beforehand because he hadn't put his hand up. And I almost think having this pre-learning would have benefited him 100%.
So, IRSE, the Institute Railway Signalling Association. I know it, being on track, and I used to hold an IRSE license when I was new wet tester. I went over signal maintenance, which didn't require an IRSE license, and in the very, within a reasonable amount of year, or maybe a bit more, they've now pushed for S&THs to hold an IRSE license. I have my personal faults of IRSE, and I've made them very clear, but I've also pushed back, and why subcontractors, and this is the other world of it, is subcontractors and on the book staff, the differences of IRSE and how they see it and why it's used and where it's used. and what IRSE really should be used for in S&T in our personal opinions. And I think that is undoing a massive question here of where do you see it helpful in our industry and how has it worked in you in the training environment?
I still technically hold a IRSE license, although when I've moved into training, it's sort of almost null and void. So I've got quite a bit of experience of it. I think I held it for 6-7 years in the end, being previously working for Network Rail. For me as a Network Rail staff, it didn't really, it was a requirement, like you say. It didn't necessarily affect my day-to-day role, but from working with a lot of contractors, and then obviously since moving over to Intertrain, and you're talking to a lot of contractors, it's how that IRSE license is actually physically used. It's required to have it, but how much clout does it have, and has it got the right purposes at this moment in time? And I think that's the question that I would like to sort of talk a bit more about with IRSE licensing. So we talk about authority to work when it comes to contractors, and the fact that you've got to go through all these hoops and do all these different forms and whatnot to be able to acquire your IRSE license, for me almost as a way that could be used to be a bit more stricter when it comes to licensing, to ensure that people obviously hold the competencies and maintaining them. And it can almost blend into one, because you look at the way that the structure of the railway now, you've got your Sentinel, which obviously if you're a contractor currently is going through it, but you've got to have your SMTH on there, your medical and your PTS. Outside of that, your competencies aren't kept in there. And then you can have your IRSE license, and then you've got to have your authority to work. And I'd like to see a pathway where that IRSE, because of what's in place for it already, is used a little bit more for that side of it, to ensure that people, one, have the right credentials to do the work, but also how they're maintaining them is all built into it. And I think that would probably give that IRSE license a little bit more power as well.
See, that when my personal beliefs of IRSE is a fantastic body that does what it's meant to do, and it is to show that an engineer has followed the procedures, and that they can follow the procedures, understand the procedures, and do as they are requested to do under their category of license. Because there's different licenses, not just one that does all of them. I think it's fantastic. There has been a known problem with IRSE issuing within the industry, and how people obtain their licensing is questionable at times. But I will say, when I've spoken to IRSE, they are 100% happy to work with anybody that wants to report or work with somebody to find out. Basically, they don't want any of that. They are very much a strict body, and they are purposely and effectively working towards tightening those maybe looser areas when in the industry that it's been over the years, and they're working hard in doing that. But a lot of people hold the license that shouldn't have the license. Is that in personal opinion? Yes. But I think there's a lot of us in the S&T industry, like I said, it's not that big, the S&T world, that we all know people that don't hold it, or hold it and maybe shouldn't. I personally am working towards an IRSE license, but I don't hold one anymore. One, because you have to pay several £1,000s every couple of years just to keep it, and I wasn't using it because I was SMTHing. But SMTHs got put in the IRSE bracket because Network Rail staff were found to be failing their own tests. So then contractors got questioned, but now Network Rail keep moving that benchmark, and the subcontractors keep moving when their own staff aren't moving above it. So now SMTHs in my world are just being stuck. You must have an IRSE license to work in infrastructure. Well, no, I don't have to work for Network Rail's infrastructure, first of all, because the SMTH license holds its own claret. But then secondly and arguably in the last year, when they done the SMTH changeover and the test, and a lot of people failed the test because the test maybe wasn't written right, and loads of conspiracy over that did root out a lot of the problems. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying there isn't change, and maybe this conversation is slightly behind, but there is a lot of positivity coming out in IRSE, and now technically I should now go get my IRSE license because they fixed the loopholes. But are loopholes still there? Yes, someone's always going to find a loophole and abuse it. But the IRSE license, when you're talking about the authority to work should come together and how the IRSE association is working towards, that opens up doors of, is it just the IRSE's issue to do it? Is it 𝗟𝗏𝗨's issue to do it? Is it the training company?
I think we're working in a day and age where there's value for money. And, you know, we've talked about on the railway, there's always a lot of grey area. And trying to get rid of as much grey area as possible. So where we're having to have 3 or 4 different ways of proving what our skill sets are, wouldn't it be far easier if we just had one? And if a company or an organisation, should I say, like IRSE, who does have a lot of power within the railway industry, was able to add that to what they already do. And then, like you say, because of that, you've now got to do even more. You've got to have someone that's got to come out and obviously observe you doing stuff, etc., to ensure that you can still have those competencies that you hold. I just feel that there's more worth in it. There's more clout in that you hold it. And then obviously there's different levels within the IRSE, so that potentially
there's so many different governing bodies or different ways of being told that you have to show your competencies. It's money for a subcontractor. There is a lot of money there. As I have to redo my SNTH recert every few years, that's more money.
Yeah.
I then have to do my IRSE recert or to be checked over and verified. Again, it's more money. Like, I'm continuously having to do several different, like you said, if we brought it into one, which governing bodies will never bring it all into one, but that's what open the conversation is.
Yeah.
And then the authority to work, okay, pay for that. But the company, your primary has to pay for that to be done generally because they have somebody off, like a trainer or assessor, to do them. There is so much money involved in confirming that we're qualified to do or competent to do the job. There has to be a better way of doing this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have the answer.
And it's also the skill sets, how you keep hold of them. So it's not just maintaining them. It's, for instance, we have people who sometimes go and work outside of the UK. And those competencies as they hold them. And that's why I like the IRSE side of it, because obviously if you go to the next level, I've forgotten what it's called. I think it's like accredited or something along those lines. When you go to that next level, you can actually take that to another country outside of the UK, and those competencies actually hold weight and they show that you're capable of doing what you're doing. So that's why, like I say, it'd be nice if that not only held weight, but also showed history of how you've managed to keep those competencies up, sort of thing. And then there wouldn't necessarily be a need to have that additional thing of authority to work and someone else to check it, etc. Yes, you're still going to have to pay, but let's be honest, you're always going to have to pay. Regardless of what you're doing, being a contractor, keeping your competencies, keeping them up to thing, upskilling, everything that you have, you're going to have to pay. So it's how you manage that, how you plan for that, whether that's a 2-year plan, a 5-year plan, to make sure you've got money for the courses or to pay for your IRSE license, etc. You've got to do it anyway. So, but how do we find a better way of doing it and making sure that we've got someone with a sort of a IRSE to sort of do that for us?
I think that's the important part, is it's costing subcontractors the money. They're paying to hold these things that they need for their career. And I think the easier the process is, the better it is for those subcontractors, because you're more likely to be like, yeah, okay, maybe I have to pay for this, but it's a lot easier than it used to be. And I know I'm following all the rules I need to follow without any grey areas, because I think that's half the battle, is there's so many grey areas of what I need to do, what I should do, what I have to do. And I think if they were cleared up, the subcontractors are going to move forward with a lot more ease.
It's more comfortable and easy to walk into doing something when it's easier to follow. Because like you said, some contractor doesn't work, they wish they work, but they don't work 40 hours a week. They work 1 shift a weekend at the moment, if they're lucky at the moment in the way the industry is. Keeping that up, plus paying for all these different ways of showing competency, it does build up. And like, where does it go? Where does it end? But it opens the conversation.
Does that open a question for IRSE and how they can support those contractors in terms of what's currently happening in the industry? Because obviously we don't want to lose any of those people that have got those skill sets. We want to ensure that they stay in the industry. And I'm not saying that they should be putting a reduction on there, but is there a question on how can IRSE licensing or IRSE support those contractors that require to have those licenses but aren't getting a lot of work at the minute?
Fantastic question. But maybe other people have other ideas. And now's the point of this conversation, to open the door to, and that there are a lot of people that have this mindset that, God, I've got to have that license. Now I've got to go do it. Because of the IRSE, like we said, there's multiple licenses. You could be a technician, an installer, you could be a team leader, you could be a points fitter, you could have all these licenses cost. There ain't enough work out there. You're not keeping these licenses up to date because, and arguably they're not every year, to be fair, but it doesn't matter. It's still...
But there's still going to come a point when someone goes, do you know what, it's probably actually easier for me to walk away from the industry. And that's not what we want. You don't want people walking away because they haven't got the support to continue what they're doing.
And that does loop back into training and skill pay, because like you said, people will leave the industry if they feel like they're not keeping their skills up to date and they can't go out and get the experience. Because how do you get experience without being sent out on that job that you goes round and round in the circle?
Last week, I was at a train station, and there was in an area that I know, and I saw 3 people out on track doing some work. I think it was just log work or whatever it was, and I knew them quite well. 2 of them out of the 3. And as a team, there was a team leader, a technician, and an operative, and they had, you'd be lucky if they had 10 years between all 3 of them experience on the railway. And that's where this important part about how can we make sure these other organisations are assisting us with making sure that we keep these people on the railway and make sure that they're keeping hold of those competencies and you know, like we said, skill fade, but also how they're getting supported to keep their licensing as well. I think there's a bigger picture on how that needs to happen going forward, especially until we find out more about CP7 and then eventually, I guess, CP8, which is still, 2-3 years away. But realistically, we still need to find out what's going to happen about that work, because we could end up in an area where, you know, we've got 20-30% less staff available that had 30 plus years worth of experience to go and start doing those projects, because it will come eventually. It's not, you know, the industry can't stay as it is. It will eventually come, but if we lose 30% of that staff, and like I say, only make that reference to less than 10 years or maybe a fraction over that, because when I first came onto the railway, you're probably lucky to have had only less than 35 years for a team.
It's normally you've got years and years, and people retire in the railway, and maybe that time has changed. But there is still a lot of people with a lot of experience in the railway, and they are leaving the railway because and driving for Amazon or doing the local routes or doing some installation work or plumbing or whatever, because it's just less hassle and it's
an easier route, and they think, why not?
You can't blame them. No, especially if the railway is not supporting them. And that's where it comes back round to, is if you had a supportive industry.
And if you had a question that you wanted to ask for S&T and you had somewhere to go to ask it, you're more likely to stay. If you've got a question and you don't know where to turn to, you're not going to stay there if you don't feel supported. So I think, especially on this video, if anyone's got any questions related to any of those topics, it's important that we're discussing this as an industry, and that everyone that works in the S&T is giving their thoughts on the licensing, giving their thoughts on how the processes are going.
It is an interesting concept, because I know like there is a lot of people trying to push themselves up and better themselves to get the more better jobs, or etc., etc. And it is hard out there. But I think there is change and people are open to change. I just think people don't know how to open these conversations, which is what these are about. But there is a lot of change with materials. And you were telling me that like you have headaches, or say headaches, but you have this consistent issue with different types of standardization of material. Why don't we go up there?
Since moving over from working at NetRail, when you go to NetRail and you're training for them, all the documentation is presented to you for your training with the toolkits. And if you're delivering to NetRail staff, you get the exact same toolkits that you would do as a NetRail trainer. However, if you are delivering to any contractors, the content must be your own that you have developed. The difference is how it's structured. So a lot of training, all NetRail training is structured through standards. So they have a whole full-on department who go around and make sure that when they develop a course and they do the presentation and they do the observations and they do the practical testing, etc., it all meets a standard to ensure that all of those markers are hit. Whereas you go into a contracting side of it, we don't have those same standards that we can work to. So
you do a course, who signs it off to say that's given out the right amount of information in this cell?
for a contractor, no one.
So if a course, let's talk about points course.
Yeah.
Because S&T points course is nothing. So let's say a camp block course. How many days is a camp block course?
Camp block course generally is a 5-day course.
Generally, a 5-day course. So into Training City goes 5 days for a camp block course. Can companies make that a 10-day course or a 2-day course?
There's no one.
In the current standard.
There's no one stipulating that you can or can't do it, and that's the difference. Is you could shorten a course. So, for instance, the first course you do BS1 and BS2, right? There's some companies that are doing BS1 as a 5-day course, and some companies that are doing it as a 10-day course. BS1 was originally done by I think it's BR or Network Rail, somewhere along those lines. And it was the course that they developed, obviously giving you the basic signaling information that you'd need as you sort of grow into your role. That course is probably 30 years old, 20 years old, somewhere around there, maybe more. And then they've moved on to other courses, but the contracting world still uses BS1 and BS2. So we've got loads of new technology that we're using now. Which is not included. It's not included in the courses. There's other adaptations that they're using. So I've heard of, since moving into the contract world, BST, so basic signaling technology, which I think is trying to minimize that gap that you've got from the fact that people are still using BS1 and BS2. But whether or not there's stuff that could be made more efficient so that you could link more into what Network Rail standards are. Or I guess I think probably what a lot of training companies have said for quite a number of years is there a way that we use Network Rail's training purely because it meets a certain standard, and it means that it doesn't matter whether you are, you work for, I don't know, Joe Bloggs Railway or you work for Network Rail. My belief is if we had a industry where we had training and it didn't matter who you worked for, you could go into a Network Rail training centre, you could go into a contract training centre, and those two groups could be on the same training course, it didn't matter who you were, it would mean that you had more flexibility of staff. And what I mean by that is you could have a Network Rail staff member who's decided that, you know, I would like to move into the contracting world, and they could move into the contracting world, take all of their competencies with them, and they can go and work in their contracting world for the next 4 years, make sure they follow the right matrix system to maintain those, which is obviously also the other thing that Network Rail do very, very well, is making sure that they maintain those competencies throughout. And then if they wanted to, after 4 years, go, do you know what, contracting's not for me, I want to move back to Network Rail. Currently, a lot of the courses that they have, or the majority of the courses they have, they'd have to go and resit. So it's costing a lot of money for Network Rail to have to go and then, yeah, and time. They have to come away from work. They've also got to pay for someone to cover their shifts that they booked on to do, etc. So there's lots of money that gets spent on that. Whereas obviously, if we had a system in place whereby you could have the same training regardless whether you're a contractor or Network Rail, like I say, there would be a lot more fluidity. So much more money would be saved actually on training as a whole.
So that's from your side, from the business-minded like training side. But from my side, I see a mass danger of workers being sent out there with potentially not the correct amount of knowledge. That is the danger that we're talking about here. It's not just, yes, it would be nice if Network Rail gave us their standards, or if there was a standardization, yes, it would be nice and fluffy for all of us. But realistically, the end goal means that you potentially have people going out there without the correct training. Currently,
yes. There is a potential. I'd like to think that all the contracting companies that go out there, and you know, I've experienced quite a lot of them, not all of them, to have very, very knowledgeable trainers, and most of the content is good, although some of it might be old pictures or scanned on from something else, etc. The content is still probably there. And majority of the courses are probably based off of a Network Rail course anyway. But it is obviously, there's stipulations in that, because obviously you can't use Network Rail's content full stop. That's just as part of it when you work for them, and obviously it's part of the toolkit and being able to have access to it. But obviously, like I say, a lot of the courses are based off of that. So they just go out and they'll have a look at manuals or etc. and pull the information to try and develop their own ones. But it's not tailored exactly to the standard for that specific piece of equipment that you're looking at.
I think what's important to remember is whether you are a subcontractor or you work for Network Rail, you require training on a piece of equipment. The piece of equipment that you're going to go out and work on is the same as a subcontractor or a Network Rail staff member. So in my eyes, if everybody's working to the same standard, everybody's trained to the same standard, in the long run, that is going to save money, because if you've got a contractor, a subcontractor who's gone to what he believed to be a creditable firm, and they've actually taught them nothing that they needed, that's going to then bounce back to Network Rail if it then falls in their area. So why not work together?
Bounce back as internet equipment could not be fixed.
Yes,
correctly. Yes.
So why are we not working together to
What would you say then? So what would you say to a subcontractor that goes on the website, sees several different training companies, see that one is 4 days less than the other? Let's say BS1, if that's the example you use. BS1, 5 days this company, 2 days this company, 10 days this company. As a subcontractor, one's less money, less time, means I can get back on track. Now, clearly, there should be a standardization of how long courses should last because of the content. But what would you say to that subcontractor?
I would say do your research. Speak to people who have done the course. As a subcontractor, speak to somebody from Network Rail who's had Network Rail trained to those standards.
But they don't have those contacts.
But if there's always someone in the S&T world that you can reach out to, okay? So I think it's important, if you want to be contacted, if you're happy to be contacted to help progress the industry, please let us know. Because we don't want subcontractors to go on these courses with firms who aren't giving them the skills that they need. And for me, something needs to be done to standardize it. And I agree with you. How do you know? How do you know what course you should and shouldn't be paying for and taking? Just because it's cheaper doesn't... People are going to instantly go for that one. Of course they will.
I guess that's where management come into play, because you know, a lot of the guys and girls that are in those offices that are part of these big companies particularly, and even the smaller companies, have experience of being on training courses. Now, if you, for instance, went on a training course that was 10 days when you first started out, and now all of a sudden you've got your own company and you've got 3 or 4 boys and girls below you, and they obviously doing a training course, and you go and have a look at what you can offer them and how you can do it, and all of a sudden you have a look and you go, yeah, there's this one that's 5 days and there's this one that's 10 days. Now, are you doing it from a business sense, or are you doing it from a sense of, I want to make sure that they get good quality training and I've got good quality staff out there? And I guess that's the question you've got to ask as a manager yourself when you're steering that is, so maybe they don't have the information because, like we said, BS1 and BS2 is the entry level stuff. But you as a manager should have that knowledge. You should be able to phone around and know that, you know, company A, B and C are really good, and we've worked with them before, we've sent staff to them before, the feedback that comes back from them is really good. And that's what a lot of the companies, including us, go off of. We get feedback from staff and we review that with the customer as well to ensure that they're happy. And like Sharnie says, if we get any negative feedback that comes back and says, oh, there wasn't enough videos or pictures or whatever the case is, we would make those adjustments to ensure that that needs to happen. But that is, let's say, is probably a lot of this is being driven from the customers, I guess, in terms of everyone's looking for efficiencies and looking for how they can save money. And a lot of that time, it comes back to training, I guess. Training is one of the expenses that they have. and they're trying to look at how they can save money on that. And one of the things that they look at is if we cut it down by X amount of days, we can save it. But like we said before, those 5 days that you save on and don't pay for, how is that now relating to when your boys and girls go back out on track after doing that course?
So you touched there, like, I agree with you, BS1 and BS2 entry level, you may not have anyone in S&T, you know, or could ask for, and that's what you got for reviews, as you mentioned. But when you get up to equipment level, I go back to points. At that point in your career, you should know several different training companies. You should know their reputation. S&T isn't that large. We keep going back to that. We know certain training companies. Everyone has a preference. Everyone has, I go back to my preference training school continuously because that's where most of my training is done. That doesn't mean all my training has been done there, but a good chunk of my training has been done there because I like the trainers, I know their equipment, I know the environment. I feel comfortable learning a learning environment for me. But I've done training elsewhere on multiple different training courses, and you pick up different things. So I'm not saying it's always benefit to go back to the same place, but there is a benefit of looking around, listening to people that have been in the industry a while. But don't go to my recommendation, hear from other people. People are biased, right?
And I think that ties back to the standardization of the training, because you go back to that same place that you're familiar with because it's a comfort, because you know the people, you know the equipment. Now, if you attended training that's to the same standards everywhere, that's going to offer comfort as well, because you can know, oh, I can't get in on this course for a while, but actually if you look at the course content, it's the same here as it is here. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I can deal with that. I've got that comfort to know that is what needs to be taught.
I guess the other side of that is the standards involved. So if the standards are set for, obviously for NetRail courses, it's not only how the course is structured, there's also the equipment that you must have available in order to do those training courses. So if that was met as well, that side of it, it means that the equipment's got to be the same that you've got, that you have it for it. So I think that side of it as well also helps to make sure that when you're doing certain training courses that you've got the right equipment to do a training course on.
And it does get back round to trainers themselves, right? Yourselves as trainers. Like, it helps you benefit because then you're also learning off the same standards and not having to learn in different paces at different skill levels or different standards.
Yeah. And if the standard includes you must have as a base minimum this equipment, you're not then coming face to face with a workaround of, oh, this is what it says here, this is what it does here, but actually out on the ground it does this.
Indeed.
There's so much of that goes on, and it shouldn't, because we shouldn't have to be explaining stuff to people via stories and this is what you would do out there. Yeah, we need to be able to show people. They need to understand the equipment that they're going to be working on.
I've been to several different big brand company names, been into their offices, and they've got it on the wall. Go, well, this will go to this. But how does it go like that? And it just doesn't make sense because it's on a wall. Or it will be a part on the floor, and they'll be like, yeah, but you just moved this screw that's up there in the corner. But it's not there because the equipment, the shell of the equipment's not there. So that you're like, but when I'm on the ground, when you go into fault mode, you're looking, as we're S&T, you hyper focus on what the problems are. If that ain't there, then I ain't looking for that. And then you, like you said, standardization means that you are getting the correct equipment. And no amount of training is ever going to give you everything you need on track. Whereas experience is fundamentally the best part. Yeah. But if you have a standardized bit of training, then we know where the base level to go from.
Everyone will start on that base level. Everyone
base level, but that level, at a higher professional level, you know where to look and how to use the equipment. Because like you said, it does come down to the content. If I don't touch that, we go back to the pre-training, right? Like if I can take a set of points apart on a computer, I know where bits go back, on what type gauges I need to use, where I need to take the measurements from. Fantastic. I come then to do the standardized training where you got this set of points here. It's exactly the same as what I saw on the screen, and I took my time to remember the gauge setting and where to take the measurements. I do the set of SMS tests or the SMSs I need to do on the course. I then go out and see it. It's all the same. It's no different. It's no change. I'm not saying that pre-training will be the same because it'd be branded to you, but we're talking long-term or industry-wide. The current problem is 𝗏𝗏 has their own training procedure and everyone else outside that bubble has their very own. So you have multiple different types of training. And that is a recipe for disaster, and a disaster like 𝗏𝗶𝗹 𝗨𝗪𝗂.
I mean,
Yes.
going back onto the equipment side of it, is actually for me, it's really good to have equipment that's working and not working, or functionally working but not working correctly. So you can go and show the delegates how that works when it goes into it. So although we say we want to make sure we have all the equipment right that's there, it's also really good for them to learn what doesn't look right for it. And then I think trying to make sure that organizations are investing in their training in that way. So trying to see whether, like we say, we're using Network Rail obviously as a sort of way of trying to mark what sort of level training we want to do. But is it a case of that we need to work with Network Rail to go and look at those standards and see what the minimum is expected? So is it a case of we use what Network Rail have, or we just work to their standards and how that works? Should we be having a central training group for S&T and for PWA and for all the other departments necessarily, so that we then know exactly what the standard is for each course and what the minimum is for each course, and that gets utilized. The other last point that I wanted to make was, if we did have standardized training material, trying to get observations done and making sure that training course is at the highest level possible nationally, whether you're a Network Rail or a contractor, would be far easier, because there's not different content. They're all using the same content. It's the only difference is the trainer that's delivering it.
So this poses the question now, as a training company, let's say I am in training company, why would I bother that? If we all use the same material, how can I market my business better than your training school? Because we got the same equipment, same training, which is what we should do anyway.
Yep.
But why would I even bother?
Experience. It's the experience of your trainers and the quality of your trainers, how much you invest in your trainers to ensure that they give the best course. The other stuff that we said about blended learning, giving them some pre-learning before they turn up to ensure that they hit the ground running, giving them content that they can take away with them, not necessarily standards, but obviously, for instance, Sharnie's previously done a structure for how to strip a set of points and build a set of points back up. So then being able to take those few bits and bobs, those are the things that could make you stand out, I guess.
I've got to say, the trainers I've had in the past, it could be somebody who is just knows this piece of equipment on a specialist training course, or somebody that's been in the industry decades longer than I have. It's always their experience that you take away from those courses, because like me, I ask a million questions. I'm like, yeah, but when would that happen? Or why is that happening that way? They have the answers, or they know where to go and get the answers. When I'm not saying a trainer must know everything about a piece of equipment to train on it, because that could also be impossible. But to have that experience is where you would then be able to prove that.
I think it's also the trainer's honesty sometimes. So being able to say like, oh, do you know what? Actually, I don't know. Why don't we try and go out there and try and set that fault up that you're asking about, see if we can re-mimic it, and then we'll see what the cause was after it.
Controlled environment.
Yeah.
You can then.
Yeah, the pressure's off. You can play around. You can experiment, and you can say, right.
So sandboxes are used in a sense of a pre-set up environment, training environment, where you can set faults or you can manipulate faults to get gains. And they are, 𝗏𝗏 have some fantastic training schools, but I've been in 𝗏𝗏 depot and they had a fantastic set of point sandbox, but their own staff that I was embedded with were not confident enough to work on them, because if they were working on them and they found a fault and they couldn't fix just like that, management would then be like, well, you should know this, you've just done a points course. So there needs to be, it can't just be as simple as the actual delegate or the upskilling and everyone else working on point. It also needs to be this controlled environment, where that's why we have test beds. That's why we have controlled environments and upskilling potential, because
You're not in S&T, as we've said a lot, there's so many competencies. There is a lot of faults that can happen. So when it comes to a training course, you're going to cover the preventative maintenance. That's the whole idea of it. You do preventative maintenance to prevent the faults. There isn't anyone that I'm aware of that can tell me every single fault that can happen, for example, with a set of points and exactly how to rectify it. So in terms of the sandpits, etc., they are a great idea. I 100% think they should be used more. When you've got downtime, etc., just get out there, take bits off, put bits on, see what happens. You're only going to learn through experience. You're only going to learn by seeing these things happen.
Or should say, when you have permission to go on, don't just go taking it on track. It could be live, it could be dangerous. As much as it's a sandbox, it's a controlled environment. Don't just be going on there taking it on track.
No, but she told me I could.
Yeah, he's happy to told me I could just go outside. Is that?
I mean, I prefer to call them practical training areas, and the reason being is because more and more our staff are being called out to go and train on some of that equipment on these sand pits. So I think those practical training areas are great, but once again, it leads back to what we were just talking about. Do they meet a certain standard so that you can train on them? And when they're working on them, who have you got there to support that staff in doing so? And I think that's a bigger issue in the industry, not just Network Rail, but for contracting staff. Do they have the time to go and play with this equipment to make sure that the skill fade doesn't occur? Have they got someone there to support them? Or if they don't have someone to support them, what other means are you going to ensure that they're doing that task properly? And that kind of blends with all of this that we've just been talking about regarding content and training material, etc. I think we as an industry need to really look at ourselves at how we are ensuring that the skill fade and the information that delegates take away with them is relevant and stays relevant. And I believe there is some other things that we're looking at currently, going forward. How can we ensure that we add that to the training courses and add stuff for them to take away to make sure that they've got relevant information, but not numbers and statistics, put it that way, so that the standards are always adhered to. So if you're going to go and do a task, you still go back and have a look at the SMSs or SMTHs, etc., to do them. But some of the base knowledge and those bits and bobs to try and sort of peak them to get, oh yeah, that's what I need to go and do. We want to make sure we try and get that to them before they leave the course now.
Happy. Once again, thank you for having us. This is very much a new podcast series, and the idea is to provoke the questions that we all have. How have you felt being on the podcast?
It's been great, and I really appreciate the opportunity that you've given us to start these questions, get the ball rolling, getting people talking, opening up the floor to be asking these questions and looking at these solutions. It's been great.
Because like I said, we're S&T. The three of us are S&T one way or another, and you've been ex-Network Rail S&T team, maintenance teams and fault finders. So we all know roughly the same people and with the same industry and the issues we have in S&T. And there are so many, and we all sit around on the big projects talking about the problems in S&T. But really, there are so many different parts to it that need to tighten up and need to come together with the standardization, with the open about upskilling and about the issues of skill fade, that those conversations are paramount in our sector of the railway industry. And conversations like this show others that it's okay to talk about it. We have skill fade in S&T. It's not down to the individual candidate. That's down to an industry issue. But there is ways that we need to work together to bring us all back up as an industry where we should be.
I think we've all experienced it, whether you're contractor or Network Rail. Everyone always has questions. Everyone's always happy to ask those questions in a certain community, not necessarily to the wider community. And that's why this is great, to be able to have these conversations, to be able to ask those questions as to what you can see, and then try and see, can we actually solve some of them ourselves? Can the people viewing this actually do some input and tell us what they think about it? Can some of the organisations that we're mentioning add to the conversations that we've been having today to sort of say, yeah, we agree with that, or no, that's not something we'd be interested in. And maybe from that, we can then move forward and ask other questions into how we move forward from issues that we've had today.
You're doing my job for me. This is amazing. We'll get better every episode. Thank you ever so much. But very quickly, who is Intertrain and who is it?
So we are Intertrain. From my perspective, we are out there to train. We're out there to deliver. We're out there to be approachable and build and work together with the industry.
But Intertrain as a whole is a training provider for the railway sector in different and not just S&T.
Not just S&T, no.
S&T, we do track safety, we do track engineering, we've also got welding, and we also do on-track plant as well, and I'm probably missed something out over there, but we do a variety of training, but we don't just do railway training. We, as a company, we do a lot of other stuff, safety training, and obviously other parts. So, as a
whole is a very large company that works in so many different categories, and all the information is online. Intertrain is such a large name anyway, but information is online, and how to contact you two through your LinkedIn accounts. I'll post it on the video so people can find you directly. Anything else you want?
And if you're obviously looking for any courses, we can have a look obviously into
conversations about how you can help with the standardization with 𝗏𝗏. They can contact you. It's all open. Everyone here is open to move forward to help anyone, regardless.
We want to build the industry up, not break it down. We want to build everyone's competence and work together with everyone.
That's the whole point of sort of agreeing to be part of this, is because we're open and willing to help with change and see where that leads to and how we work together. And like you said throughout the whole thing, is this is about openness, about asking questions and seeing how we can improve the industry forward.
Fantastic. Again, I'm Daniel Murray. I'm the founder and CEO of Connected Railway, and it is the three-sided network from subcontractors to resourcing companies, but also the training providers. We've mentioned it once before, but very quickly, in the training side module that's coming out in very few months is everything from a whole career tree, regardless of what you do on the railway, so you can see the different avenues, the different steps, what the next steps are, where to get that training will all be under that same module. Also, where training providers are able to advertise their courses to the relevant individuals that work on the ground, that want to have boots on ballast. There is so much coming from Connected Railway, but the Unfiltered podcast series, if you want to be on it, just contact me through LinkedIn. It doesn't matter if you are where you are, if you're boots on ballast, first week on the railway, or if you've been in the industry 40, 50 years, everyone has a valid point and everyone needs to be heard, because together we can build something, because apart we're just going to be going into the mist of where we are now. And I think we all need to come back together and actually start having serious conversations. So